everybody. Good afternoon. Okay, what we are going to see today is about the new program, especially a contemporary art program that Palazzo Strozzi is putting up in the last period, in the last more or less 2-3 years. Okay, so what Palazzo Strozzi is, maybe not everybody knows our institution. Palazzo Strozzi is one of the finest Renaissance architecture of Florence. Was built in 1489 and finished in 1538 by a series of architects such as Giuliano Sangallo, Simone del Pollaiolo, and Baccio d'Agnolo. It was sold to the Italian state in 1939 and became one of the most important exhibition space in town. Since the foundation of Fondazione Palazzo Strozzi, I mean the institution I run, we try to open the palace to the city, and now the courtyard that you see in this picture became a proper urban piazza. I mean a social place where more than 1 million people a year come across. Our foundation is a private-public foundation, which is very rare in Italy that private and public go well together. And our main mission is to bring in Florence international exhibitions. This picture is from our last show on Cinquecento in Florence, who was acclaimed as the best exhibition of the year in 2017. We do all kinds of exhibitions, old masters, antiquity, modern, and now we started with contemporary art. But normally we produced our own exhibitions, but sometimes we also work with international institutions in important collaborations. We don't do only exhibitions, we also use our space in a creative way. This is a picture of our last performance by Vanessa Beecroft in last September, produced for Palazzo Strozzi. We use the courtyard as a concert space, any kind of social events, and we are very strong. Our mission is very strong in education for children, family, elderly people, and for disadvantaged public, such as affected by Alzheimer and mental disease. But let's go at the center of our talk today, Florence and modernity has a troubled relationship, actually. Florence and contemporary art seem to have had a difficult relationship since the half of 20th century. Celebrated as the cradle of Renaissance and not to reach in terms of modern art, Florence has remained slightly resistant to modernity. A good example of this resistance was the Florentine misadventure of Peggy Guggenheim in 1949, when precisely at Palazzo Strozzi was held a highly controversial exhibition of her collection shortly after she moved to Italy. Here you can see some pictures of this 1949 exhibition. It was the first time ever that in Florence they had such a modern show. And it was at Palazzo Strozzi, as I mentioned, but it was not in the main floor. It was in the cave, underground. So it was a way of hiding this contemporary art. They were actually very frustrated because it was a kind of profanation of the temple of the Renaissance to bring this kind of collection. And poor Peggy, this was the reaction of the press. Un baraccone. Baraccone means, in a very pejorative way, a circus. It means this is just a stupid, mess of garbage collected by a spoiled, rich American girl. That was the final judgment by Florentine people to the poor Peggy. The ill-fated transit of this great modern collection in Florence, shortly after the end of fascism and Second World War, can be seen symbolically as a missed opportunity for a city still too tightly bound to its own great past to accept modernity. Our new program, designed to bring great modern and contemporary art to Florence came into its own in 2016 and took this historical precedent as a way to start. We wanted to remedy and to apologize with Peggy. So we organized the Art of the Guggenheim, a major show on one of the truly great families of collectors and patrons. In the exhibition, there were masterpieces of European and American art up to 1960s. For the first time, such major modern art was displayed in our town. Because of the huge success of public of this show, which introduced our institution to modernity as well, we could say that Florence was changed since the 1940s. And we like to think that Palazzo Strozzi's new direction towards contemporary art is set out precisely from that missed opportunity in 1949. The major shift of our new direction was the Ai Weiwei Libero exhibition, which literally invaded Palazzo Strozzi, the entire palace being treated for the first time as a single exhibition space involving the facade, the courtyard, the first floor, and the basement. This is only the first floor, sorry. The show gave visitors a chance to become thoroughly acquainted with every aspect of one of the most influential artists of our times, who has pegged his name to political battles for freedom of expression and for the defense of human rights. The adjective libero, free, in the exhibition title, referred to the freedom regained by the artist few months before our show, but also to the creative way in which he used and interpreted the spaces of our Renaissance palace, starting from freeing them from all the temporary structure covering its interior. For the first time, as you can see, after many decades, the palace's interior was naked. Thus, contemporary art allowed visitors to rediscover the elegance and purity of our 15th century building. We were able to rediscover our past through the lens of contemporary art. The exhibition also proved capable of sparking a cultural debate at a national level, in particular with regard to the role of contemporary art in relation to society's issues. Anyway. At the same time, pointing the relationship between past and present in a venue that is the epitome of Florence, Ai Weiwei used and enhanced the symbolic power of Renaissance. He engaged our past. And he did it, creating for Palazzo Strozzi 4 new works of his famous Lego series of portraits of political dissidents. Those portraits were inspired by historical Florentine characters such as Dante, Savonarola, Galileo, and Filippo Strozzi. And he especially engaged our past with the site-specific installation Reframe. This installation, drawing attention to the fate of refugees who risked their life to get to Europe by crossing the Mediterranean, triggered a very lively debate in the media. The set of 22 rescue rafts that framed Palazzo Strozzi classical windows provided a new frame through which to look at the future of Europe itself and the renewal of solidarity among peoples and cultures. Ai Weiwei Libero was not only the artist's first Italian monographic show and the largest ever devoted to him, it was also hugely popular. In fact, it turned out to be one of the contemporary art exhibition, attracting the highest number of visitors ever in Italy. I would say rather a good start for our first contemporary attempt. Yes, then we not only displayed the works inside the Palazzo, but also outside. For instance, here we are in the Uffizi Gallery, in the main gallery, and we put this camera, which is a symbol of control, in front of the corridor, the Vasarian corridor, which was at the time a symbol of control of the prince on the people. So 2016, this is 2017, Bill Viola. Also, Bill Viola Electronic Renaissance was the biggest and the most comprehensive survey ever realized, covering over 40 years of the video artist's career. The title evoked at the same time Renaissance art, which was inspirational and the reference point for the artist, and the technological component, a central element in the practice of moving images. Florence is Bill's adopted city. His career was greatly influenced by our town, with which the artist has had a long love story. Arrived there as a boy in 1974, he spent 2 years in town, participating in what was then a minor but living contemporary art scene. In the exhibition's itinerary, the comparison or dialogue for the first time realized of Bill's work with the Renaissance masterpieces that truly inspired it was striking. Similar comparisons have been attempted in the past, but never before so ambitiously and philologically circumscribed to works, themes, and places that really matter for the artist. We couldn't avoid placing the greeting next to the painting that inspired it, The Visitation by Pontormo. The greeting, acclaimed at the 1995 Venice Biennial, has considerable importance in the artist's oeuvre and corresponds to the beginning of a new experimentation linked to old master art. In this work, a few seconds of a scene are dilated with an extreme slow motion, thus revealing a myriad of details which would go unnoticed with normal vision. What interested the artist was the representation of a precise moment, everyday and simple, and an encounter between three women, within which the complex inner and social dynamic of such a mundane fact could be described. According to Bill, this challenge was even harder for the painters of the past, who could only choose one moment in time around which a frame would be placed. In the same way, the video emergence and the Pietà fresco, detached fresco of course, by Masolino da Panicale could be seen side by side. The video quotes the fresco literally, but at the same time very differently, with a kind of inverted slow movement. Our selection of works included The Path and The Deluge, taken from the cycle Going Forth by Day, an architectural installation of considerable dimension, creating a fully immersive experience comparable to the large fresco cycles of the Central Italian tradition, from Giotto to Luca Signorelli, an epic video fresco aiming at humanism of our time. The path alone is almost 11 meters long and completely covered a wall in the palazzo. The work depicts various people walking in the same direction in a forest, each in their own way. They are suspended in another reality, and they are inspired by the novel of Nastagio degli Onesti, written by Boccaccio in the Decameron. But the most spectacular room of the show was probably the one with the two deluge scenes. In Bill Viola's Deluge, we witness a torrent of water pouring through the windows and doorway of a building of classical architecture, sweeping away whoever is left of a crowded urban scene. Its visual repertory is rooted in the great catastrophic scenes of the Italian pictorial tradition, those that Bill had discovered in his wanderings amidst the wealth of Florence's museum and churches. Among these, the huge fresco that Paolo Cello painted for the Green Cloister in Santa Maria Novella, The Flood and Receding of the Waters, stands out as an absolute masterpiece, with its monochrome tones, the metaphysical geometric architecture, and the characters overwhelmed by the flood and yet still fighting each other. A more recent work, such as the diptych projected onto large black granite slabs, Man Searching, Woman Searching, is inspired, albeit reversing it, to the sensual representation of the young naked bodies of Adam and Eve by Cranach, based on a Dürer's iconography which impressed Bill Viola. This impression simmered in Bill's mind for some 30 years, until resurfacing in the making of this work, in which two elderly people investigate their bodies' decay under the beam of a small light, as in contemporary Vanitas or Still Life. The survey not only occupied the whole of the two exhibition spaces in Palazzo Strozzi, but also extended throughout the city and its region in many locations, including spaces that were important for the Italian-American artists, such as the Museo dell'Opera del Duomo, where two pieces, Acceptance and Observance, were installed to create a connection with two of the treasures of the museum, the wooden statue of the Magdalene by the old Donatello, and the dramatic Bandini Pietà by Michelangelo. Hosting the exhibition Bill Viola, Electronic Renaissance at Palazzo Strozzi, meant showing the profound centrality of tradition in the evolution and choices that have revolutionized the art of our time. Now we have seen what we did of contemporary in 16 and 17. You are the first one to discover what we are going to do in 2018, spring. Just a quick look into the next future. So, in a few weeks, Palazzo Strozzi is hosting the Florence Experiment, a new site-specific project by the artist Carsten Höller in collaboration with a scientist, the plant neurobiologist Stefano Mancuso. A special commission for Palazzo Strozzi, which wants to renew the bond between art and science, a binomial typical of Florentine culture since Leonardo da Vinci. Connecting internal and external space of the palace, the Florence Experiment will comprise two experiences. These are Carsten and Stefano. Two experiences, two monumental intertwined slides, which will spiral visitor down a height of over 20 meters. This is the rendering. And a live analysis of the impact of human emotion on plants' growth. The project has been designed to further our understanding of ecology, not only as respect for nature, but as the awareness of empathy between man and his botanical environment. Visitors will be handed a small bean plant. We discover beans are very intelligent creatures, to accompany them as they slide down from the top floor to the palazzo's courtyard. To exit, the visitor will then pass into a laboratory. This is the bean plants. Into a laboratory located in the basement of the palazzo, where real scientists will measure the plants' photosynthetic parameters and volatile molecules, as triggered by the emotion experienced in the descending visitor and picked up by their plant. The basement will also house two special cinema theaters held in crystal boxes, one screening scenes from funny comedies, the other excerpts from horror movie. The audience's contrasting reaction will produce different volatile chemical compounds which will travel through a system of pipes. It's very complicated, I know. System of pipes and tubes to the facade of the palazzo. Outside, the impact of these compounds and their effect on the growth of a white wisteria plant arranged to climb up a series of wires, will become increasingly apparent over the summer months. The impact of the public sphere, or joy, is expected to visibly influence the direction in which the plants grow. This is what they say. Thus creating a plant graph illustrating the interaction between human emotion and plant behavior. The Florence Experiment aims at creating a new awareness of the way in which we see, understand, and interact with plant life, turning an architectural Renaissance masterpiece into a fully fledged scientific and artistic experimentation, mirroring the Renaissance values and the alliance between art and science. So we've just seen what we did in the last 2 years with contemporary art. Now, just to tell you, these things worked very well. Florence was a reluctant city to contemporary art. It was impossible to think to do something like that. And it's becoming a capital, a new capital of contemporary art. We are the only place in Italy where this kind of major, let's say, contemporary blockbuster happen. And I mean, numbers speak very loudly. These are the visitors in 2016. So you see one of the highest here. And this is how our public is changing. More young people, more people coming to Florence for the first time just for our show, more tourists, and more people coming to Palazzo Strozzi for the first time, and more people loving the shows. This is important for us. As you can see, we have less local, in a way, more foreigners and less Italians. And this helps because this is an Italian problem. We have more and more minor public funds. This is the graphic. So we have to do with private funding and with ticketing. And it works for the city. This is what we call the economic impact on the regional economy. In 2016, hit 51 million mark, the highest score ever done. That figure is calculated on the basis of a consolidated methodology elaborated by Boston Consulting Group, show that Palazzo Strozzi cultural activity, especially with contemporary, has a considerable multiplying effect on local economy. And this is important because our mission is of course cultural, but is also to create a new kind of more sustainable tourism. You know, Florence is a city which is cannibalized by tourists, and we don't want that it becomes like Venice. So it's important to create these kind of things to make a more sustainable way of tourism, of cultural tourism. Thank you very much.